get rocking and rolling here. If you don't mind, appreciate you taking the time, Jason, from your car.
Yes.
Yes. Down in Georgia, or you're on your way back to
Well,
Georgia?
I am in Tallahassee at the moment. We're coming back from the beach from vacation and had a few hiccups this morning, so we're trying to make it work.
Yeah, no, this is perfect, man. Doesn't get any better
Yeah.
than this. Well, let me introduce the two of you real quick and then dive into what it is you're going to, talk about. So we've got Jason Van Ness, who's from Lowndes County Schools down in Georgia. Give me what city you out of down there? I know
That's in Valdosta.
yeah, big school district. You've done some great things around work-based learning. Really excited to have you involved. You give a little background about yourself here in a second, but certainly appreciate having you here, your expertise, and have really enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple months here. You were a part of our online conference back in April, and we had a ton of people really spoke highly of what you and Peter talked about on that day. So I really appreciate it. And we got Peter Hostrawser from Naperville 203. Am I right on that one?
Yep, that's correct.
203, where he is the director of all things career readiness, I like to say, but you do a ton of work around internships, work-based learning, getting students, involved with communities, your community and your business partners. So Peter is also a podcaster, where he is one of the two. Allie is your partner there in regards to Disrupt Education. It's an outstanding podcast. For those of you that haven't come across it, I'd encourage you to take a listen. So appreciate having the two of you along for the ride today. Let's knock it out of the park. Have a good conversation. Have at it, Jason. Give us a little background, and we'll get her started.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk with you today, and Peter's going to have to drive again because of technical difficulties. I'm on my iPad, so he's got access to my slide deck. But
I got it. I'm going to share it out right here.
And I've condensed it down pretty. I know this is just kind of the whetting the appetite, so to speak. But I want to talk about partnership development, and particularly what I think schools do wrong. It's funny. I was just texting Peter and Allie yesterday from the beach as I was reading a bunch of books that would make no sense for an educator to be reading. But I think that when it comes to education, the quote I was telling them about was that the mind has become a prison in education. And I really think it's become a prison, and that we can't get out of our own way, and we can't think about how we're viewed or how we're perceived. And so I want to talk to you a little bit today about acquiring the yes. I can just give you 7 real world tips to recruit industry partners for work-based learning or career tech ed. It doesn't really matter how you want to apply this. It could just be for school partnerships. But the main thing we'll talk about is how do you do this to grow your programs and make sure your students have those opportunities. Peter, you can go ahead and click next for me. So basically, here are a couple of these I want to talk to you about. One is you've really got to you got to hustle. You really got to hustle. You got to put the work in, right? The next one is you need to speak the right language. The third one is you need to find those alphas, and we'll talk. This is just kind of a summary. I'll give you some more meat on the bone here. 4 is you want to know your pitch, know your programs is next, and then know your customer. And then the last one is going to be build relationships. You go ahead and click next, Peter. So I talked about first about just hustling, putting in the work, and I kind of say, congratulations, you're here. I mean, this is your summer, but you're here. You're wanting to find ways to be more productive, to grow professionally. I don't know if you're considering this professional development or just leisure time with friends and colleagues, but whatever it is, you're here. Congratulations. But the next one is when you put in the hustle, I want to make sure that you understand that we need to cross the bridge from educator to industry partner. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're seen as a peer from industry. I think industry is good at throwing us bones. They're good at tossing us, a little recognition, but they don't really see us as peers in the business world. And I think that the ways to combat that are to attend their meetings, to go to those chamber meetings, those Rotary meetings, those development authority meetings, and not just the fun ones either. I know that sounds funny, but not just the ones where there's an open bar, the ones that are a golf course. But you want to go to the meetings, the budget meetings, the meetings that are going to be the ones that no one wants to go to. Attending those meetings, letting them see you as a peer in that environment is very helpful. Another thing about hustling is making those cold calls. Don't be scared. Sometimes my wife picks at me because we'll go out to eat, at a restaurant, and then I'll talk to the manager and be like, hey, do you need any help in the kitchen? I run a work-based learning program, and I've got kids in the culinary, and I'm always looking for placements. And my wife was like, man, can we ever go somewhere where you're not working? And I was like, no, I can't. We can't. That's my job, is to find these placements. So do those cold calls, just walking into businesses, knocking on their door, asking to speak with a manager. Yes, they're going to confuse you as someone who's applying for a job. That's understood. But say, hey, look, I'm not applying for a job. I'm trying to give you access to students who may really help your bottom line. And then lastly, never turn down an opportunity to speak about your program. I've said it before. I think Peter's probably heard me say it 100 times, but my friend from Alabama has this saying where it says, it's a sorry dog that won't wag his own tail. And I think that's important for us. Schools don't do a good enough job of telling our success stories or wagging our tail. We've got to do a better job about wagging the tail and showing the students successes that we've had in industry. But that's the first point, is hustle access. All right, Peter, you can go to the next one. Next one is going to be speak the right language. And this is really, I would say, one of the most important ones, because we want to speak what I call this educational alphabet soup, right? But what we want to do is we want to move past the quantitative, move to the quantitative and then past the anecdotal. Show them exactly what's happening. So what this means is you need to be collecting data, because without data, you're not going to be able to go in and communicate with industry in a language they're going to understand. So what types of data moves the needle for employers? Some things like how many students you have, obviously is going to do that. Local wages earned, total economic impact. Those things move the needle for industry partners. In particular, they move the needle for your people like your mayor, your city council members, your county commissioners, because they want to be able to see quantitatively how valuable your program is. So I just did the numbers for my program for the 24-25 school year, and we're a little under $9 million total economic impact, meaning wages multiplied and how it circulates through the economy. That's a value that when I give to a mayor, the county commissioner, I can say, hey, look, when things happen, make sure that my program doesn't need to be on the chopping block. Make sure that whenever cuts happen in education, that CTE and what we're saying aren't cut, because we're the ones putting students in our community who are having this type of taxable, returnable impact in our industry. So what does that mean? Move past local development, you move more toward local development and move past philanthropy. Okay, that's what I mean, the ROI. And I think one thing that schools are really, really bad at, and Peter can talk about this as well, is we're really bad about pitching philanthropy. Hey, just do it for the kids. We really need some people to help these kids, give them a shot to get these kids in industry so they can learn these skills. No, that's our job. So let's move past the philanthropy and the altruism of do it because the high school kids need you. And let's move more toward speaking the language of local development. Hey, I'm giving you access to talent, and then you're giving you an opportunity to retain that talent. And once we've done those things, now you have a talent pipeline. And that's kind of where we want to see this. And so you'll notice these final 3 bullet points. The first 3, the first one in each pair is employer or industry driven. What are the last 3 in each pair? Who's the beneficiary of this conversation? Schools are. And that's a problem. When we speak to industry, we can't speak to industry like we're needing them to help us. We need to flip the script and say, no, we're giving you access to talent versus, hey, we need you to hire our kids. We're talking about the same thing, but that's a different way of framing it. Speaking the right language. Talent retention versus, hey, we need you to help our programs out. No, I'm giving you access to talent early before your competitors, giving you the opportunity to retain those who meet the bar, meet your standard. And once we've done that, now you have a talent pipeline and an established advantage competitively over everybody else in your industry. That's what I mean when I say speak the right language. We're stuck speaking educational alphabet soup, IEPs, 504, CTSOs, WBL, YAP, all these acronyms. You know, we're not quite as bad as the military is about those acronyms, but we're close. Let's get rid of those and just talk to industry about things that we deal with, but do it in their language. All right, Peter, you got a couple more slides on this one, I believe. Next is you want to know your pitch. What is your value to industry? And again, this really abbreviated slide, this is like an hour and a half presentation. I'm abbreviating down to 15, 20 minutes. But the thrust of this entire presentation is data, right? You have to have this data. And so when I started collecting data from work-based learning and my wages earned, I said, well, why don't I quantify this and see what my total value of my program is for the entire community? That's going to allow me to bring in industry partners. So know what your value is to industry. This is my elevator pitch. We've got some documents that I've given to Scott. He's put, I think they're going to make those available to you. One is a little elevator pitch template, and another one is an alpha brainstorming worksheet. We can find those alphas in your community. But your elevator pitch, I've already mentioned mine. Mine is access to talent retention, and talent pipeline. And I really, really, really want to encourage you, whenever you're recruiting business partners for your schools, for your programs, stop leveraging philanthropy or altruism as the main pitch. It can be a part of your pitch, but that is not what moves the needle for industry. That's what moves the needle for us, because we're educators. That's why we're not in industry making more money. It's because the idea of impacting a student and changing their lives is that's part of the calculus for us. That's not always part of the calculus for someone who's in industry. They're typically about, and I'm painting them with too broad of a brush, but they're typically about profit, return on investment, how are my resources being used, and what am I going to get in return? So it can be a part of your pitch, but it doesn't need to be the main pitch. My main pitch is local development through talent retention and access to talent. That's my main pitch. Okay. And I'm showing them what is their return on investment. All right, Peter, after you know your pitch, the next one is you need to know your programs. No, and I'm talking about the programs in your school, right? No, you can't be someone who's recruiting, even if let's say you're just a healthcare person, you're just a marketing person. It doesn't matter what program you're recruiting for. You need to know all of your programs, including what the standards are, what these goals are, what the quality of these programs are, what the outcomes are, where does your student typically go? You need to know this because you have to know what you're, I guess for lack of a better word, what you're selling, what you're recruiting for. So if you're out talking to a hospital, let's say you're a healthcare student or healthcare teacher, you're talking to the hospital about employing your healthcare teachers. Well, don't pigeonhole the hospital, because they also would be really good at hiring someone in marketing, hiring someone in social media, hiring someone in culinary or food nutrition, hiring someone in welding or maintenance or electrical or construction or IT or cybersecurity. So when you're recruiting, you may have the in with the hospital because you're the healthcare teacher. And again, this is just an example. But if you don't know your programs and know your standards, you can't go and say, well, gosh, we also have an accounting pathway. You can hire people in our accounting pathway, and you can have, they can come in and they can sit intern or apprentice with you in human resources or in payroll, or you can hire someone in our IT and cybersecurity pathway. They can come in and work on the back end with all these technology. So again, just an example, but showing you, don't pigeonhole these programs, know your programs, and be able to sell all these programs, especially if you're in work-based learning, like Peter and myself. Like, I have to know every program and every standard, because I never know what my conversations are going to turn into. And if I don't know how to sell healthcare, what if a conversation with someone turns into a conversation of, hey, we really need CNAs or nursing students? I've got to know all those programs. But even if you're not work-based learning, it helps to know those programs, because you can pitch your entire CTE area when you're recruiting someone in your potential area. But also, like, don't pigeonhole these companies. Look for companies that can hire 5 or 6 kids from different pathways within your area. All right, Peter. Next is knowing your customer. Oh my gosh, probably my favorite thing about this miniature slide deck is you have to listen before you begin pitching. Okay, introduce yourself, tell them what you're there for, but listen, ask them, what are your needs? And a lot of times when I talk to people and I do consulting with other schools and help them build their work-based learning programs or help them recruit partners, the thing that no one understands is that a no from industry is actually a blueprint for a yes. When they say no, we can't do this, we can't hire kids under 18. Now that's a blueprint for the problem you have to solve. If they say no, we don't have the resources to do this, we can't just babysit. Now you know the question or the issue you have to convince them is not an issue. They're giving you the blue. Whenever someone tells you no, and this is sales across the board, whether you want to be in education or not, when someone tells you no, what they're really doing is they're developing a plan for you to get to a yes. And so listen, put your story on every billboard possible, whether figuratively or literally. Begin to sell your programs, know your customers, know what your product is, and know how those two things align. If they say, Jason, I appreciate your hustle, but man, students just can't do the work. Now I have a blueprint for the yes. And how am I going to get there? I'm going to go back in and I'm going to find and tell them proofs of concept from my students who've worked in welding fabrication areas legally, my students who've worked in commercial and electrical construction, my students who have worked in or apprenticed in architecture, drafting and design. And they say, Jason, we can't hire these kids, or they can't do the work, or it's too technical for them. No, that's the blueprint. Now let me show you. And the way I get to the yes is show them that I'm putting these same kids with all their competitors. And their competitors are taking advantage of my programs. But why aren't you? And it kind of creates that what I call that FOMO, or the fear of missing out. It's not what I call, it's what I know is FOMO. I didn't make that term up. But when you create that competition over your students and people realize, oh, we can't do this, and you say, yes, you can, you show them how, and you say, and as a matter of fact, someone who's in the same segment of you, of SKUs and what they're selling, they are actually doing it. Now you start to realize, well, gosh, they think, well, what do they know that I don't know? So knowing your customer, telling your story, wagging your tail, listen before you pitch, let them tell you what their issues are. And then also you want to be aware of these generations, because your pitch is going to change slightly if you're pitching to someone who is, in their 60s, 70s who own a company, or maybe you're pitching to that person's grandson who's about to take over that company. Your pitch is going to change just a little bit. All right, Peter, thank you. Thank you, Peter, for doing this. I appreciate it. Just tell me where I need to
No
send
problem,
that.
man.
Tell me where I need to send that check to. And then 6 is finding these alphas. I really want to encourage you. You've got to find people who are going to legitimize your program, people who can move the needle for your program, for your school district, people who have influence in your community. Now, I will say this: don't mistake someone's title for influence, because that happens a lot. There are people who have these really fancy titles who don't do anything. They can't move the needle for your community. And I would even say that there are probably some people, I'm sometimes or grew up in a rural community, and sometimes it's those really important titles that don't mean anything, and it's actually the local farmers guild that actually is who moves the needle. So find out who's in charge, who is the head of the farmers guild or the farmers association, and have them onboard them into your program, get them in your corner, and they're the ones who start pushing as people move that needle for your program. Leverage your contacts and your networks, and find people who can provide what I call the 3 W's. Okay, so I try to make it really simple. 3 W's. When you're recruiting someone, can they provide one of 3, 2 or 3, or 3 or 3? They need to at least be able to provide one of 3 W's. Can they provide workers, meaning will they hire your workers? Can they provide wealth, meaning they're going to financially support your program? Or can they provide wisdom, how you need to take your program, train your kids, where you should go? That's an alpha. Anyone who can provide one of those 3 things is an alpha. Now, on the scale of beta to alpha, right? The more these W's they can provide your program, the more important they're going to be to establishing what I call proof of concept with your students. Okay, so can they provide workers and wisdom? They may not want to contribute money yet, but if they can provide workers and wisdom, they can hire your kids and give you guidance on how you should train those kids to meet their needs and segment of industry. That's a really high level alpha in my book. Okay, if they can provide all 3, they're a no-brainer. And maybe you're come from a wealthy school district where having money is not a problem. So maybe you would deprioritize wealth and look for workers or wisdom, or maybe you come from a really poor district where you really need people who can help you get equipment for your program. So then you would maybe want to elevate wealth as a priority. But one of those three, if not all or as many as you can get of those W's, workers, wealth, or wisdom. And again, find those people, get them on your program. And oftentimes when you get them just in that last role, that wisdom role, wisdom I mean is they're sitting on your advisory board or your board of directors or whatever it is that you need. Once they're on that board of directors and you start showing them what your kids can do, I have had numerous, I can think of 3 off the top of my head, just the past 4 years, people who sat on my advisory board who became employers or provide a place for my workers just because they heard about my program, saw what we could do, they saw the proof of concept. And that's a really low leverage sales environment. They've already committed to sit on your advisory board. Now you're not really selling them on hiring your students. You're just showing them what your students can do. They're seeing it and they're saying, gosh, why am I not hiring these kids? So finding alphas is probably one of my that and communication are probably 2 of the biggest things we can really talk about here. And then that last one is going to be cultivate relationships. This is hard. And again, I don't know what your contract situation is. I don't know if you're happy with your salary. But some of these things, when you got cultivate relationships, you're going to those chamber meetings, the Rotary meetings, all those things. Some of these events may be after hours. Some of these events may be not reimbursable by your school system. Maybe the mileage is not, or maybe the meal is not. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm not saying you should come out of pocket. I'm saying I sometimes come out of pocket and do things that aren't reimbursable because it's going to establish my program, it's going to meet a need for somebody, or it's going to open a door for me, which is going to make my program better. So cultivate relationships. It takes time. It's not easy. It takes a lot of effort. Okay. These events may not be during your school hours. May not be reimbursable. And then I would say start small. Start very small. Don't feel like you've got to go out and get 50 employers the first year. Get one employer, start small, build that relationship, make it successful, and then sell that story as a proof of concept. And then the next semester, you may get another one. Now you have 2 proofs of concept. And then you start building your employer book and rolling that out. And now the machine is running and you're just steering it versus having to go out and do all this. So when you start, it does take time, does take effort. But putting it in now, building that, snowballing it, really is gonna find a way to make it meaningful for you and your students. Mm-hmm. And I think the last slide, just my contact information, Peter. Yeah, so if you're interested in contacting me, again, I work with Scott and Peter a lot. That QR code should put my contact information directly in your phone. I am the director of work-based learning for Lowndes County Schools, but I also run a small consultancy where I travel to school districts.
Did we just lose him?
I think we did.
Yeah.
Right when he was going to nail the sales pitch for consultant work.
Yeah, he was saving battery. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I want to pause there because I know Jason very well, and I can probably answer some of his questions, or if anybody has anything there, or Scott, if you wanted to throw something in here that you may have a question. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have a few questions for him, but I'd ask you the same questions, to be quite honest, Peter, because you obviously in the last year or so and what you've done, you have had to do this work yourself, building those relationships with your community partners for specific placements of internships, right?
Right.
Talk a little bit about, because I'm just now at that level of trying to get some school districts to move down that path itself.
Yeah.
What advice? What can we,
Well, yeah, I'm going to show this and pass this along to everybody. This is, again, we're truncating a lot of information here, so it's kind of meeting people where they're at. Just kind of going backwards, like right now, I am the co-coordinator for the internship program at District 203. There are 2 of us. Brett Thompson is my counterpart. We just actually presented yesterday at the career conference in Tinley, Career Connections Conference in Tinley Park, Illinois yesterday. one of the things that I wanted to kind of bridge what Chloe and Sean were saying in the initial the first conversation was it was a lot about mindset in the 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 way that you have to get people to start thinking about how to utilize your community, and how to bring them into the school and vice versa. One of the ways that I actually started, I'm a business teacher by trade, so that was initially coming in. I mean, even before that, I was an entrepreneur. I didn't get into teaching right away. One of the things that I would highly suggest is get your high flyers and have them do a project within their curriculum with a an entity. So, for example, I was in District 230, which is Stagg High School, Sandburg, and Andrew in the south burbs of Chicago. And one of my good friends, great sandwich shop, is Robert Peplowski, and he owns Peppo Subs, and he was expanding at the time. So there were two things, there were two courses that I worked with. I was teaching a website development course, and I was also teaching an entrepreneurship course that we built basically a little bit off the incubator program, which is an amazing program in itself. And one project was we wanted our students in our website development to recreate his website for him. And as a matter of fact, he was like, I have another small business owner to bring in. And so we divvied up the class, and that person was a young person who was doing Christmas lights, holiday lights, not just Christmas. They were doing like Halloween and all these different lights for school or for people. And so what we challenged, it was a team-based challenge is what we call it here in Illinois. And that's where we started to make connections, and that started opening up more connections because that these people were like asking, hey, how are you doing this? And Robert is a great asset for us, and he still is actually, where he's talking to other people. It's just you find those educators, and this can be beyond CTE, where they are reaching out and bringing people in on projects. I think that's the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And honestly, what Jason has kind of what he's taught me and our program is actually how to continue to close sales, if you will, close ways that hey, we're not just being nice to students. Our students are bringing true value. We've taken a number. I can't remember. It was a quote somewhere where any employee that is able to roll right into an a company and kind of pass up the transitional stage because they know the skills that we've been talking about will save that company $4,000 to $4,500. And we added in, okay, well, we got 100 students in our program. I mean, you can do the math. That's a lot of work. So we're utilizing kind of what Jason was saying there about, pulling in. This is the economic impact. And he's got more ways of doing that, but that's just our initial, hey, guess what? When we're talking to our mayor, when we're talking to people who make decisions around, are we going to keep these programs and such, we are bringing those up. So I think the lowest hanging fruit, though, is just getting it into a class. If you're just starting, I don't know where everybody is on this webinar, but just getting it into a class, like have a student team-based challenges and just work on something. But you had to have that mindset of that educator that is, hey, I want to try this and give them the space to try it. So I don't know, Jason's back, so I don't know if you wanted to ask that question to him. He's charging your iPad, I'm guessing. I don't know. So
Technology, man, we couldn't be doing this back in the back when we were in school. This is
Yeah, pardon
non-existent.
me. Like I said, I was meant to be in Starbucks using my laptop, and so my daughter got sick, so pulled in and was doing my iPad, but it wasn't charged. Now I'm on my
okay.
phone, but
Okay.
the video is not going to be great. But yeah,
No.
I'm here. I'm here.
That's all
Yeah.
right.
So what question did I miss? I'm sorry.
I just was asking, what does this look like in the school itself, hands-on with students? give us an example of a student walking through the participation with a business, something of that
Yeah,
nature. Great.
yeah. So in Georgia, work-based learning, the program that I'm in charge of, basically replaces one of their classes.
Oh,
So let's just say they have me for 2 blocks. That means that they get out of school at 11:23. And then what they're going to do is when I'm on their schedule, they leave and they would go to work if they're or they go to work whenever they're scheduled. They don't have to necessarily go to work during the school day. They may not be scheduled to go to work until 4 to 11, however they want to work that. Or I can release them early from school. So if let's say I put somebody at a welding fabrication shop and then they are basically fabricating at night and then installing in the morning, then if the student is there as a welder, then they need to go in the afternoon to get the fabrication part of that. If I'm putting someone there as an installer or someone who's going out to sites, then they would need to be there early in the morning. So I can flex their schedule and do that. But students apply for my program, and then I vet those students to make sure that there's no outstanding discipline, attendance problems, that I can trust them to be off campus, because there's a lot of flexibility and trust in this program, because I'm not directly supervising these students every day like a classroom teacher. I'm going to make 2-3 site visits a semester to their location, talk to their employer. But what work-based learning really is doing, and this is like a whole nother talk, but what work-based learning really is doing, Scott, is you're leveraging private sector laboratories for public consumption, if that
mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm going in, and let's say you have a rural school who can't afford to put in that, $3 million automotive lab. Well, when through work-based learning, you can leverage the local dealership to put in that high end, where you're not really putting it in your school, but you're sending your students to that school and that facility to do that. So students would apply, I would approve, and then I would go out and work on getting those students placed in jobs that align with their career tech pathway. That's the thrust here,
Um,
is trying to prove to our state that there's returnable assets coming through their investment in our vocational programs, our career tech programs, through obviously the Perkins and then whatever they put on beyond Perkins. Um, and so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what it looks like. So
Mhm.
let me give you an example of a situation. We had a student, or I met with an architecture firm, and they said, Jason, we don't have any post-secondary schools in our community to bring this in, right? We don't have any post-secondary schools to send our students to. They have to leave our community. So we want to have access to these students. Can you help us solve the problem? Give us access to these students so we can onboard them, and then they can go to school, but they can go to school as an employee of our local entity. It was a company called Studio 8. And so we did that. I put a student with them. He interned with them for 2.5 or 2 years in the summer, left Valdosta with a full-time job offer before his first day at Georgia Tech, where he graduated early and is now back working full-time with that company. So that's what this looks like. That's a really cool success story of basically an industry saying, Jason, we wouldn't have had the time. We would not have had the time or the opportunity to get this student. He would have gone to Atlanta to Georgia Tech. He would have been snatched up by a firm up there. But work-based learning and career tech
Mhm.
ed has allowed us to invest in the student, to onboard them, and then to send them to school as an employee of ours, which is pretty unique. So for a small town like mine, what we essentially did was we flipped the script for the first time ever. We flipped the script, and we may lose that student to Atlanta, but now the default position is no longer they're going to go to Atlanta and stay in Atlanta. The default position is they're going to come back here. Now, we may lose them, but we're not having to recruit these students away from Atlanta. Atlanta is actually having to recruit them away from us. And that's a win for a small rural community like ours.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, in Illinois, I mean, it is law now. So I know, like, Jason and I, we have conversations between like Georgia and Illinois and the differences in states. But in Illinois, we have the CCPE, which is the college and career pathway. I don't like that. We've had conversations about that,
Oh,
but it's
yes.
basically a career pathway endorsement, right? So our students are signaled They go through what I have on the screen right now is a career awareness piece where in middle school within our school districts, they go through something called Motivate, where there is specific career pieces where they explore and they have access to a ginormous event that we do. I'm going to give, Scott, you have all of this. This is our entire presentation. There is a ton of things here. So just not knowing where people are in their own continuum, they can utilize a lot of this. But a lot of there's a lot of synergy of what Jason is doing and what we're doing. As a matter of fact, we're constantly learning from each other. The kids then go into career exploration. That might be like a field trip, it might be a speaker, etc. Then we go into those team-based challenges. And Scott, you had Dan Gonzalez here. He's an expert in that, especially District C in that conference, and that was amazing. I mean, actually, Jason, Dan, and I had an amazing conversation at the end of it. I'd highly suggest people go back and take a look at that for the Future CCLR conference. And then they go into a career development experience to where they're kind of starting to experience things. And then that's what Brett and I teach them, how to communicate and how to build resumes. It's going through all of this. And then we get to that work-based learning. So we're actually the tip of the iceberg and we're building backwards on this. And I think that's interesting because we did get a question, and Jason, you brought it up in yours as well. Yesterday was, how if you're an admin in here, how do you compensate like an educator, right? So I will let you know, and in here is our actual titles and our job descriptions in this whole presentation. The thing is we get contracted 20 days in the summer on top of a teacher contract, right? You can do it different ways, and we're looking at different things. The thing is though, what Jason is saying is right. It is going to take more time than any contract. And the funny thing is at the end of the day, if you have somebody who's wanting to do this work, but they're counting every single hour, that's not the right person for this job. You've got to be
Amen.
passionate. You've got to, I mean, Brett and I work every day in the summer. I mean, look at like Jason's on vacation right now for crying out loud, and he's, doing this work because we love it and we're passionate about it. And so things like that, you got to pick the right people. So that's something as well. But this is our continuum, and I'm gonna go really quickly through this, but this is where we're seeing these trends that are happening, and I know Jason sees similar trends, and this is student wise. These are what our kids want. These are the areas and the pathways that you're seeing anywhere from accounting, marketing, entrepreneurship, IT, health sciences. So we have these endorsements we have to go through the state. The students basically go through all that little pathway piece. They go through the academic parts, which many of our classes are dual credited. So they're getting at least 6 dual credited hours in their academic piece. And then they're with Brett and I as we're building these relationships. And again, these relationships, just kind of bouncing off what Jason was saying, is we stopped the, oh man, it would be great if you could help these high school students. As soon as we started seeing what our high school students can do and feeling out how fast they work, I'll be honest, we have some marketing students that are doing things so quickly and effectively for marketing companies using AI. The actual intern can't keep up with giving them stuff. That's how fast these students are working, and so what we're doing is we're leveraging that. And again, the FOMO thing is real. I literally just got another email. We have two different organizations that are very similar in helping physically and mentally challenged people, and we're meeting with one on Friday, and the other one just reached out, just literally in the middle of this, because they're saying, "Hey, wait, we can leverage this talent pool." And I'm going to be frank, and I know Jason and I have talked about this, about that young person going to Georgia Tech and that access in Atlanta as opposed to Valdosta. But like I think one of the things that we do tell our people, and you can do it bluntly and you can do it kind of easily, is like, look, you're actually paying for workforce um, workforce development. You're paying your local taxes, so let's be a part of that. Let's get deeper. Let's get some more ROI on your tax dollars. And you have those earlier accesses, like that young man who went to Georgia Tech, but that's his first thing. So I think that's something that we're really excited about. But I do want to, kind of, and I know I'm bouncing around here, but really like let your students talk for themselves. This whole program started with 2 students 3 years ago with Brett Thompson is the IT director, and we're up to 90. We're going to be we're learning how to scale and scale fast. But if you read any of these, I mean, this is exactly the durable skills that, Scott, you were talking about. We're all talking about, um, you know, do it. It'll only help you. It'll confirm your career interest, or it will let you know what not to do in the future. And I wanted to highlight that quote because we do have students that go through our entire pathway endorsement program. They'll get a pathway endorsement maybe in marketing, but they want to go into communication and public relations, a different area. And the the one of the biggest objections or opening to a problem that we can solve is always been are we pigeonholing students, right? And Jason says this the best, and I'm probably screw up the way he said it, but like if we keep doing what we are doing in a traditional sense and putting students into all AP and a college only track, it's a this rather than a yes and we're actually pigeonholing kids by not exposing them to experiences outside of our school building. So that's something that we're very passionate about, and we really want to kind of reiterate that with everybody. As they're changing mindset, our students will talk about it. I do have everything about our framework here. I do want to leave some time for a little conversation here, Scott, because I know you wanted to, kind of move some different things, but you'll have all the different pieces. This is our PACE framework in Illinois, but I know other states have them as well. The things that the checks and balances, I mean, this is, we're looking at attendance, same thing that Jason, you're saying, we're vetting our students. Every one of our students right now, we do not have a co-op program. We have a CCPE or an endorsement pathway program. We do know that there is a need for both, but right now we're building our endorsement. And we do things differently. I think Jason, you're talking about how sometimes you place students. We may guide students to a different area, but we do not place them. And that's just a difference of the way people do things. And the reason why we don't do that is because we want our students to get hired or not get hired, and then we coach them from that point. So yeah, and that's just something that we're rolling through. We have all our marketing videos and social media and different things like that. There are videos in here, and again, I'll pass this along, but the students are talking about, what they learned, and it's amazing. And this will be the last thing before we can kind of have a conversation is most of our students come in thinking that the academic skills are the ones that they need. I know how to code. I know how to create an advertisement. I know how to do these things, and those are your check boxes. But they don't realize the communication, the problem solving, the real teamwork in a business aspect. Those durable skills, we call them cross curricular, cross sector, I don't know, competencies. The state of Illinois, that it's education speak in the trade world, but one of the things that our students quickly figure out is those are actually the most important skills, because with those durable skills, or however you want to say them, soft skills or whatever, if you don't have those, you are not malleable at all. And it doesn't matter if you're the best coder, best welder, or whatever. If you cannot work on a team and understand, how to move the needle within a company, and problem solve, cultural competencies, understand, you're done. So it's not always the best person to do the job if you can't work with others. So I wanted to just throw that out there. So Scott, yes, we got about 5 minutes. I wanted to leave some parts here. But yeah, that's and I'll dump this in the chat too, so people can see it.
Well, as I was,
Thoughts? You on mute.
yeah, I'm over here talking.
It's okay.
That's right. Yeah. So, anyways, Yeah, if anyone has any questions, throw them in the chat or unmute and just ask. But it's interesting though, Peter, to your point and what you're talking about, right? What you have pulled together, what Jason does, for your districts. Go back to the conversation that Chloe and I were having and Sean was having.
Yep.
When we at the end of that, that design learning sprint that we did, and we had students in front of us, or they had to give a pitch, what was lagging, right? It was those durable skills. They struggled. They struggled to be able to present, communicate, engage,
Hmm.
collaborate together. We saw it right in front of us. And interestingly, over the number of years in education I've been in, this concept, if it would have been something back when I was exiting school, just and yourself, you guys just think of how much further along we would have been,
Yeah.
how much more skilled we'd be. Um, yeah, it's just amazing the way I see how we're evolving. It's very interesting. The other,
Yeah.
the other thing I would say is this, and to the point both of you made, the benefits for our business partners, right? So there's company reputation. Um, Peter, you talked about workforce diversity
Hmm.
and the support around how do you become more diverse, but also that local workforce impact along with recruitment efficiency.
Mhm.
Um, I guess one question I had, and I'm hoping we can squeeze this in. I'm seeing we don't have anybody that's having any questions.
Okay.
How do we see ourselves in regards to just not being only a talent pipeline? Because
Yeah.
on our educational side, we need to help develop these kids. And as we see kids in front of us that don't have these
Yeah,
skills,
yeah.
Hmm.
yeah.
I'll say that that's one of the reasons. So I am big on talent pipelines. The
Yeah.
downside to treating these as a talent pipeline is it changes the conversation and talks about kids. It makes kids look like an asset. And are kids an asset?
Yeah.
Yes. Long term, they are an asset to a company, but they're still kids. And so
Hmm.
that's why I created that event called the Reverse Career Fair, was because
Yes.
I wanted to make sure that kids did have the skills to sell their skills, to be able to communicate, to be able to look, to do some background research. And I wanted to make sure that kids were prepared socially. Now, I call that social capital, learning how to develop social capital, because bottom line is I'm establishing my network. If I want to leave my job, I'm going to call Scott and Peter and say, hey, guys, I need you to put my resume out there to some of your friends and get me a job, help me get an interview, whatever. That's social capital. Like people in Milwaukee don't know who I am, but through Scott and Peter, they may be able to, or Chicago or however. I'm teaching kids how to build and develop that social capital to leverage for themselves, which transcends in they can do that as a welder, they can do that as a car salesman, they can do that as a surgeon. Um, so that's a big issue I've seen, and one of the reasons I developed that reverse career fair.
Yeah. I think as well. I mean, this is a bigger again. It is talent, but being these are humans, man. These are amazing young people who are lost. Because let's think about it. Like when we graduated high school, it was like, here's your diploma, go figure it out, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
What if we
Yeah.
helped people figure it out before? And it again, nothing is going to be set in stone. We know students at this next generation are going to move 15 to 20 times in different jobs and different things like that. But what we are teaching them to do is to pull different assets from that help them build into their why. And kind of going back to, what you were saying, Scott, is about their passion and what they're all about and those different types of
Mhm.
things. I mean, there's a couple of different things here that now as we're building, our chamber actually just invited me about a month from now to talk to their young members on being a generation gap work specialists. Like I'm that person because
Wow.
that's who we are, right?
Yeah.
Because
absolutely, absolutely.
there are 4 or 5 different generations now in the workforce, and there's a lot of different communication, a lot of different ways people see it, and we all, Jason and I, when we're out here working, we see the different generations. We might be seeing grandfather who is owning the business or the grandson who is taking it over, and they're very different conversations. Jason said it himself. The other
Very
thing is
much.
mindset change. you will run into people who just don't get it. And I want to give an example, and don't get like, you can't get offended by it. You just got to let it go. Most of our starting points are small companies and alum, right? Those are our starting points. We had a huge event through our chamber. We have a very active chamber here in Naperville. And basically it was the state of the city, and we had a booth in the back, and we put two interns back there to work. I gave them a $25 gift card, and to Jason's point, that was out of my pocket. I was like, here you guys go. Like, this is awesome. The school, it was too long to do all these things, but we knew we needed it to build the program. Plus I got a free lunch out of it, so I figured I'd pay $50 for a lunch. But
Yeah.
a BMO Harris person came in, BMO Bank of America. And no disrespect to Bank of America. I mean, I know a lot of people who bank with them. But it was a higher up, and he came in and he was like, "Is this for college students?" And I was like, "No, this is the District 203. This is the local high school, and we're doing internship programs." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we only take juniors and seniors in college." And I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." But he's like, "Because of the reason I'm coming up though is my daughter just graduated college, and she is having trouble finding an internship." Now, he didn't really realize what he just said there, but what he just said there is the why of the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's because, so if your daughter went through 203 or any of one of the programs that we're building here in this room, and had that, model in place to where you're building your professional side along with your academic side, she wouldn't be in this position, right? And that is my hope for our students, talent or not, that they can actually chase their dreams. So that, I just wanted to end on that, because you're going to get the, and you can't be mad at those people. It's just, it's a traditional mindset, and you learn from it and you move forward with it.
100% accurate there.
Yeah.
Jason, any parting words? Appreciate your time.
As
Yeah,
he's actually
well,
parting.
Yeah. I would just say, like, the example that Peter just gave, I would say is relevant and is very common. And so the way I close that situation, you'll see that in the document that I put in that folder, that brainstorm document and the elevator pitch document, is say, hey, look, well, when you're ready for a creative solution to your industry, your workforce industry needs, and then reach back out to me and say, because right now, whether you want to or not, your tax dollars, as Peter mentioned, are paying me to develop talent. And unless you have a strategy to actively hire and pipeline that talent, then what's going to happen is you're actually paying for us to develop talent for your competitors to hire. And that normally shocks them awake, like, oh gosh, I'm already paying for this. Why not capitalize on it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's what I would end on. Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We appreciate you taking the time, Jason, especially being on your vacay or on your way back from vacay. I love how this unfolded. It really puts our flexibility and ability to pivot with technology to test. So it was great. But thank you, Jason. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. And those that are listening on the recording, how can they, real quick here, if you don't mind, Peter, how can they reach out to you, and then also Jason, if you guys don't mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. If you just look up my name, Peter Hostrawser, you'll find me everywhere. If we're teaching kids to build their brand, we got to build our own, right? So, but on LinkedIn is a big place where we always talk. And then if you just look up naperville203.org and Peter Hostrawser, or hit Disrupt Education podcast, I'm there.
Got it. Jason?
Yeah, for me, it's LinkedIn. That's the only social network or social media that I've got. That's where I put everything. So, Jason Van Ness on LinkedIn, and look forward to working and collaborating with everybody. Thank y'all for having me again.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. And thank you for those that joined us live, and thank you to those that are listening to the recording. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody.